Mary K. Greer is a scholar, a writer, teacher, and professional tarot consultant. And with more than 40 years' experience in tarot as an author and teacher, she advocates a revolutionary approach to learning and using the cards that emphasizes personal insight and creativity. She's so much more than that, everybody. But, and I believe, hi, Mary.
Hi. How are you, Maureen?
Oh, so lovely. I'm so happy to hear your voice. I feel like I know you so well just because, like I said, 1988, 87, something like that. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have anybody. You were it.
I'm glad my books were there for you.
Well, it was it was that one, oh gosh, people, if you don't, people listening, Mary, and people have called you the tarot wise woman, or a lot of other wonderful things, but that was the best thing that ever happened to me because, like, for me, I'm self-taught, and I got connected with the tarot, and I identified everything that you were talking about in the tarot, the workbook. It was fantastic because what I did, I didn't go about what people were, read the descriptions and do this. I was connected to them because I was going through a terrible, hideous time in my life. It was like a 78-step program is what I called it. And I would draw pictures of the cards. I just would pick them up, and I was going through all this stuff. And I felt like, when I found this workbook of yours, it was exactly what, no one was understanding me, what the heck was going on. I didn't understand it wasn't descriptions, but it was like the way you were. It's like your essence about how you approached it or how you viewed it. Do you follow me on what I mean by that?
I think so. The essence is that I tried to present ways that people could discover the cards for themselves, but it's kind of hard if someone says to you, just look at the cards and decide what your own meanings are. That's impossible, or at least it was for me. So the workbook was all kinds of ways to kind of trick you into discovering the cards.
Right, and a lot of people, what I found, I wasn't an artist or anything, but I sketched, drew what I was seeing, and having a little bit of background and some of the descriptions, of course, of what there were so many, people with their descriptions of reversals, but I drew the sketches, and it's interesting. From that, I was approached by somebody to do illustrations in their book. I mean, I was an artist, but I was getting so much out. They were for just my benefit of me learning really some hard lessons of taking a good look at myself, which was not very comfortable. That. It's almost like they're just a real big part of me, and I didn't find. I mean, like I said, your workbook, and I passed that book on to somebody else years, like in the 90s, later on to somebody else, as a matter of fact. But anyway, here we are,
a new edition with all kinds of new material added in. So, I hope you got a new edition for yourself.
I haven't, but I want to. In fact, because when I ran across you, it's like I said, you're like the woman. To me, it's can you tell us? I know, you were a college professor. I mean, former college professor. But could you give us a little bit of a background? I mean, you've had 40 years, and how is it that why tarot? Why? Why?
I was in college, and this was way back in the late 60s. A friend got the Eden Gray book, Tarot Revealed, for Christmas, but no cards. So she was my best friend. We're sitting there looking at them, and I just had this passion that I had to find these cards because they seemed to speak to me. So I went on a quest, asked around, and it was Florida. And interestingly, Florida has an old tradition of the spiritualist kind of world. So you have to look carefully for it. But at the time, there was a metaphysical bookstore on the other side of Tampa, and I borrowed someone's car and went off and found the cards. And I decided right away that someday I was going to teach it in college as an academic subject, and that someday I would write a book about them. And I saw myself in my 60s or 70s finally writing down my life's wisdom. luckily, I met a guy who I was with for 21 years who encouraged me to write my book much sooner than that, my first book. And I kind of went on from there.
Thank you to him. Thank you wherever he is. Thank you to him. Mary, so this was in the, well, as I can recall, the workbook that I can recall, it was from 1980, it was in 1984. I picked it up in 1988, the workbook, as I can recall. So you've been, that's almost like you were the pioneer to me. There were a lot of different people. I mean, of course, as you know, there's this and that, but from there you've, and it's not like, everybody listening, you don't put out a book every month. And during that time, it's not like everybody could publish a book either. It wasn't like it is now, bless everybody's heart, but you had really something to say, and the way you approached, and the way, and I love Union and the Tarot is, to me, I'm real connected with that as well, the way I approach them. But your way was just more like, it wasn't like telling some people, this is how it should be done, or this is how do you say? There wasn't any rules so much.
Yeah, one of the basic ideas in Tarot for yourself was break all the rules and find out what happens. And sometimes you learn, oh, that was a good rule. I like what that, the kind of limits it puts on me, or the direction it focuses. And sometimes you learn that the rules are silly, like the idea that someone else has to buy your first deck for you. I bought my first deck, and I'm so glad I did. It was one of the best gifts I ever gave myself. So, that rule I absolutely threw out. But there were other rules that I found worked for me, or some variation on them.
And what were those?
I'm trying to remember right now. Okay. One of them is, don't read... if somebody asks you about someone else in their life, don't do a reading on that other person without their permission. And that's been a major ethics rule for me that I almost always hold to. Occasionally there's a really important reason why your client needs to know about this person. It impacts them directly. And so, there are a few cases where, you're going to relax the rules. But in general, that's a rule that personally, for me, has been very important for tarot.
I agree with that. In fact, it's invasion of privacy when someone asks me. I feel... if they're asking about someone else, I say, well, let me hear if they have permission. Give me the permission slip on that. You're ethical, you have integrity, and you're authentic. You're an authentic truth. You're all about truth, and that's why I felt. And like I said, I didn't have but I can honestly say, I guess you were my mentor. That was it. You were it. You're it.
So I'm really honored to hear you say that.
Oh, there's a lot of other people out there, and this, and it's funny how the journey is going. It's like for some people, it was really great for me because I didn't know I didn't pick this work, but this is what I must do, and so, there's so much I want to talk to you about. I don't want to go around in circles, but I can. I can, because I have so much to talk about. But what I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, I know that you're known as a tarot wise woman. I love that because yes, you are tarot wise woman, and but also now, well, you are, and it's. You're so authentic. That's the thing. And talking about the cards. Speaking of that, buying for other people or whatever. I have no idea what that's about because myself, I learned on the Aquarian deck, first deck of all decks. Interesting. Everybody said, but it was only because I don't know why I was going through a rough time. But I know it's interesting. But you had an audio. I think yes, in 1988. I wanted to ask you real quick about this. Did you, audio? Remember those cassettes? I remember cassettes.
Yes.
Okay. In 1988, did you put out an audio course program on the tarot?
I had a couple of audio things that came out. One was for a big company that, although it didn't last long, it had meditations and so on with the tarot. And then the other one was a set of interpretations for the cards.
That was it. And at the same time, and in December 1988 was when I first decided to go in profession. I came out of the closet, whatever. I produced an audio, and I didn't do it. I know you were gonna, but it didn't make it very well. But I did one called. It was an audio, and I picked tarot cards for people, and I marketed in that way. It was not a good idea, but and I remember getting yours. I go, wait, during the audio cassette days, and it came with a little booklet. And I remember I got yours, and I was like, oh my God, it was a fantastic. I still have it, the audio tape and the interpretations, and it was fantastic. And mine, I still have thousands and thousands of cassette tapes of mine. But that was, and it was just the synchronicity of it all. It was like, it's just like something. And I wanted to ask you because I knew my mind hadn't gone into some timers on that one, but Mary, I wanted to also, especially now, you've been people, please read about Mary, in her bio. I can go into this, but you have so much credibility and awards and been honored and, acknowledged as you should be. But, what would you say about right now? We're in a really interesting time. I feel we are anyway. And so there's a lot of the psychology, going into the psychology and the tarot is really something that's present right now, or more so talked about, the aspects of the tarot, the psychological aspects, combining in psychology. How is that? What do you think about that in your personal view and professional evolution of it all? What do you think about that?
Well, a lot of people have accused me of doing tarot therapy, and certainly because I've studied the work of Carl Jung and many other therapists and psychologists. I've studied them for a long time and was doing a PhD in East-West psychology. So, that's definitely, it has an influence on my readings, but it was also there at the very, very beginning. I was influenced by Jung and Campbell, which is why I was so drawn to the cards in the first place when I was in college. I saw that connection immediately. And the work that's in Tarot for Yourself, it's all about coming to know yourself more deeply. I just have to draw really strict lines about the way I go about a spread, and especially not doing, regular weekly sessions with people, because it would turn into therapy if I did. So I guide people through their own experience of the cards as much as possible. 15-minute spread, our reading, I don't have much time to do that, but when I'm doing a full reading that takes an hour to an hour and a half, a lot of that time is involved in my guiding the person through looking at the images on the cards and responding to those. I feel it's far more important when the client has an insight than when I tell them something, even if what I've told them is absolutely true. If they come to the realization, especially with an emotional component attached to that, in other words, it strikes something deep in their being, then they're going to remember it more and are more likely to make changes, if necessary, around that than if, the tarot reader tells them. So it's just my style. I feel things are much more important when a person has their own realizations.
Absolutely. I love that, and exactly what you're saying, because it's not the card that's speaking. It's I love that, and that's exactly right, that they're getting a real, and again, that's how, the way you approach things. So, it comes to the book, and I did name everybody. Yes, I named the topic show, and not because I, just created that name. It's from a book. Is that your most recent book? What Are You in the Tarot? It was 2011, I think?
I guess is that more recent than, I also did 21 Ways to Read a Tarot Card. I just don't remember which one was more recent now.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah, I think Who Are You in the Tarot, which is a redo of Tarot Constellations on the birth cards. Is more than that. It's more.
I remember you have done some redo because your journey and your expertise. I know that you've done some redo or connected with some of them, but yeah, you've written so many. But I know that and I love how you go back at the constellations. That's about what is in Who Are You in the Tarot. Is that true? That you combined
That's
it.
the cards and your cards. Cards that are personal to you based on your birthday.
Right. So everybody out there listening, even though I love I love the title, the topic. I mean, for the show, is your book, the title of your book. I hope you're okay with that. But Who Are You in the Tarot? I personally liked because, like I said, I connected with the Tarot not to read for people. I connected with them for reasons. Well, it ended up being I help people, but it had to do with me. Who am I in the Tarot? And I always say, Tarot is a symbolic record of human experience, and I feel very strongly about that. Just for me, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong or I believe it, but so with that said, what you did with this within this book, and there's so many great books here, but this one I wanted to focus on because you're also very well educated in astrology and numerology. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, it's not what I work on as much now, but I certainly have gone through periods where that's been a major focus. Yes.
Right. And during the time before they had computers, so you really we had to calculate everything back in the day in astrology.
So we do all the calculations ourselves.
Yeah. You know what? No one who doesn't remember that. That was a neat thing but it took so some time to consume. It's easy now. Well, Mary, could you talk to us about your book anyway? I know that for anybody out there, do you feel this book would be something that maybe a beginner's, if somebody was interested in the tarot or never, for themselves or just curious, would this be the type of book that would work out for them to play, to
Oh, it's perfect for people who don't know anything about tarot, and you don't even have to get into reading the cards. You can use this as a system in its own right if you want. So you can start out knowing nothing, just with a tarot deck and your birth information, and that of all your friends, of course, and go through and find the cards or the archetypal energies that are most congruent with you based on when you were born into this world, this incarnation, our Western calendar system. It all works together. So, our Western calendar indicates a birthday that is you being birthed into this culture at this period of time. And I feel those numerological connections really seem to make a difference. I've used them in almost all my in-depth readings over 40 years, and just seeing how closely those personal cards align with people's core issues. So all the cards in the tarot are archetypal energies within ourselves, but certain ones kind of like highlight. They light up more within us, and some of them are by age and time and levels of interest. Like when a woman is pregnant, the Empress becomes much more active in your life during that pregnancy and early childhood time, and other periods, other cards. But your birth cards, and then also the cards for each year, really help to give you the direction towards that all-important sense of the soul purpose. So does that kind of give an overview of...
Are you articulated and presented that absolutely wonderful, because I understand, and also it sounds like a book that would be really interesting for people to learn together, because from what I want to get this book. I have not yet done so. Okay, I'm telling you the truth, but I have looked through it, and you put it together really well, because it's very, you have, it includes detailed instructions, charts, and exercises to determine how, you come to your soul and personal cards, and how to determine everything you just spoke about. And it sounds like it'd be a really it's a book where people wouldn't be intimidated whatsoever. Like you said, they don't even need to know what each card means. But I always found all the sciences when I have been reading, and I've had to figure that out again on my own because I self-taught in astrology and numerology. It's amazing how they all fuse in. I mean, it's like I was like, wow, and back in the day, not too long ago, but how it all started to make sense, everything, and I don't. And with you, when I ran across this book, I know it's been out for a couple. Well, we probably don't know now. Either it's 2011 or 2000, but I didn't know it was out there. I'm certainly going to get it because I would love to. Your information is fantastic, and so, like I said, so truth that it sounds like a really fun book that you could really have a lot of fun with too, with other people.
Oh, yeah, you look up all your family and your friends, and it gives you insight kind of on how to approach someone. If I'm doing a reading for somebody and I first work out their birth cards, I have an immediate sense of how they're best going to hear the information in the spread and where they might get their backup or something. So I've already got a handle on that, as well as by looking at it, it sometimes brings the issue that they've come with into more focus, because almost always those major life issues relate back to your personality and soul cards, those basic cards from your birthday. The interpersonal stuff is interesting. There's a lot of family dynamics that you start seeing in the cards that belong to each member of your family. If you're married, like my mother and my ex-husband's father had the same card, and his mother and my father had the same card. So we had this kind of cross-parental influence that we both understood.
Oh, wow. I like that. Is that a synchronicity, too, for some?
I find it always in families. There's some kind of dynamic like that in the family structure somewhere.
Yeah, I get that. I have to get this book myself, because I love what you just brought up. A good point for people that are already reading professionally for their clients, or they have a new client, and that is would be a nice added what's the word? Just added to your knowledge a little bit more so before the reading, and also to share with that person. I think that's fantastic. So what is it that actually? Well, what is it that you actually? Well, let's say, okay, I know you do the year card. Well, I want to get to that first. What's the first thing that you would do? If I was to pick up this book, you would figure out which card would be your birth card.
Yeah. You start out with that. I've got a little bit of introductory material where I explain the whole concept, but then the real meat of it comes when you actually sit down and take your birthday. Do you mind if I use your birthday for a moment?
No, I'd love you to. I pushed you.
Oh, you were born August 1st, 1960, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we take the month, the day, and the year you were born and write it down just like an elementary school addition project. So you've got all the units in line, the 8, the 1, and the 0 of the 1960. And so you add 8 plus 1 plus 0, and that equals 9, and then you just bring down your 6 and your 9 and your 1. So 8-1-1960 adds up to a 4-digit number, 1969. Now, that doesn't help us very much because there's 22 major arcana, so we need to reduce this using what's sometimes called theosophic reduction. It's kind of an occult method of reducing numbers to their essence, and we add the 1 plus the 9 plus the 6 plus the 9 and end up with 25. There's still no tarot card number 25, so we have to add the 2 and 5 together, and that adds up to 7. So that points us at the tarot card, the Chariot. So the Chariot is your both your personality and your soul card. Before I go into that, I want to mention there's one other card in the major arcana that adds up to 7, and that's 16.
Tower.
And
those
that's
two
because
cards,
1 plus 6 equals 7. So it's another vibration. You didn't get a 16 directly, So the Tower is what's called your hidden factor or your shadow card. I also consider it your teacher card because Carl Jung told us that our shadow is our greatest teacher. And it's so much nicer to call it a teacher card than a shadow. That means that usually during the first part of your life, especially up until the Saturn return when you're around 28, 29, it tends to kind of just react in your life without your understanding where it's coming from, that hidden card. But after your first Saturn return, it starts to become more the teacher, and you start kind of getting its lessons. Your soul card, your chariot card, just automatically responds. And as a chariot, that's kind of, some of women don't like it when they're the chariot, but it's really a strong card of mastery. It's something that, women in the modern times have been, so determined to rule our own lives and be able, in charge of our own directions, our own choices. And the chariot really focuses on that. It represents mastery, controlled and directed energy, learning to become victorious over our own impulses so that we're directing our own life. It's a hero and warrior and quest card. So a lot of the task of this lifetime for you is about self-mastery and control. That's the outer experience of it. But he wears armor. And I find it very interesting that the Golden Dawn associated it with Cancer, the astrological sign of Cancer, which is a water sign and incredibly intuitive. As a matter of fact, he has moons on both of his shoulders. So we see that there's another level of the Chariot card. He wears the armor because he's so sensitive underneath. And therefore, that control and mastery becomes important to be able to function in the outer world. You have to put on kind of an armor to protect that, sensitive vulnerability and that intuitive quality that sometimes has to be hidden in order to be able to act very in a very directed manner out in the world. So there's two sides to the chariot, as shown by the two horses or the two sphinxes that pull the chariot. So all of these factors are part of your life. You put on the robes that will kind of fool everybody around you that you know what you're doing. But really you're being led by your intuition and your higher directive force, that star that is usually shown on the forehead or the crown that the charioteer wears.
Mary, it's interesting that you bring this up, and I've known I'm a number 7. I know it comes from 25, but the Chariot and the Tarot and the Tower have always been, and because they both equal the 7, those two cards I studied more than, I went into the area. I didn't just go to tarot books. Even in the Bible, things, especially in the Tower, everything, it's like, the way I view it anyway, where I'm standing, I had my interpretation about that. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, the Tower, for one, but it was something that I embraced. I have embraced more than once, but it was almost like I went around in circles. And so if somebody's having a rough time protecting or putting, and the world's getting a hold of them too much, it could be very difficult for that type of person that would have that, let's say, Chariot and Tower. Yes?
The best quality of the Tower is that although it can indicate anger that is either really suppressed or comes up all too easily. It tends to be one extreme or the other. But what happens is that the charioteer can be a warrior for a cause, but it takes the Tower getting ignited in order to give you the drive to go out and do something about the situation. I liken it to the charioteer being a car with an engine in it. The Tower are the pistons that are fire, and that's what makes the car go. The gasoline ignites in the engine, and it's the driving up and down of the pistons as they fire that is the propulsion for the chariot. So somebody who has this combination, you have to get fired up about something. And periodically, you have to have something that tears away all the false personas that you've put on yourself in order to be able to go out in the world, in order to remake yourself as the more pure being that you are. It's necessary because in putting on those masks, on that armor to go out in the world, it can become rigidified and fixed. So the tower allows that to be torn apart, unfortunately sometimes in a somewhat terrifying kind of experience, but it brings you down to the essence of who you are and allows you to go forward then more truly yourself. Because
authentically speaking.
It's torn away.
Right. It's like, I always thought the towers as actually rebuilding a foundation, your own.
Exactly.
That works. Mary, we're going to take a 1 minute right now. I thought it'd be a good time. A 1 minute commercial break, sponsored by PsychicAccess.com. But we'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at PsychicAccess.com.
Okay, and we're back with Mary Greer, and now I have, we all know there's 4 of us co-hosts on here, and Stephen would like to step in because, I don't blame him, because Mary's offered to check into his, and his information is August 23rd, he's a young guy, 1975.
Okay, so we the month then becomes 8, which in 8/23/1975. So we add 8 plus 3, and that gives us 11. Plus 5 is 16. Carry 1, and then we have 7 plus 2 from the 23. 7, so that gives us 10. Carry 1, add that to the 9, that gives us a 10. So we have a 4-digit number that is 2006. That adds up to 8. And that's the next card after the chariot card. The chariot is power over your situation, your environment. The constellation is finding power within. It's acknowledging that power within. It's finding the courage of your convictions, the courage to be yourself. Whereas the chariot here was the hero or warrior archetype, the strength card is the heroine, the enchantress, the animal helper archetype. And this idea of being able to love whatever that instinctive drive within you is, finding the courage of that, because we don't have the fortitude or courage to stick with something unless we can harness it with our full heart's energy. And the lion on the strength card represents Leo, the lion-hearted. And so that's really where the fiery heart is in that lion. Sometimes we're afraid it can devour us. There's a sense of audacity to that could be overwhelming. Also, dealing with anger issues can really come up. And the maiden in the strength card is the one who learns to gentle that, but she also looks at that rage and that desire for, or what Crowley called a lust for personal creativity and self-expression. She looks at fully in the face and embraces it. So you have to embrace what your heart, the Leo, the lion-hearted, what that heart most desires in order to really have the strength of your convictions. So that's what that card is really all about. Grace under pressure, being able to kind of enchant the instincts, the wild source within yourself, and to have it serve your higher purpose and your need. You have to engage your heart in whatever it is that you're doing or creating. Now, the higher card for that, the higher numbered card is 17, which is the star. So here your shadow card is what's called the bright shadow. In Jungian psychology, most people think of the shadow as negative things, but some of the Jungians have talked about the bright shadow, and there's a tendency with the bright shadow is to not acknowledge your own talents and skills. So the task, the teaching for somebody who has the strength card is to really get to a point where you can see yourself completely nude, as the maiden on the star card is, to not hide anything from yourself, and to fully acknowledge what your talents and skills and abilities are. It's as hard to do this sometimes as it is to acknowledge the negative things in yourself. And it's also, the star is also a card of seeing the greater pattern of things, the connections like the star, the net, or the network on the internet, to really have that intuitive understanding of those connections and links. So does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I'm amazed. People who've known me for all of my entire 38 years would never have been able to have divined that information. I'm ashamed to admit this, but you've touched on some things that I've known as a reality, like a deep, profound internal reality. And using this technique, you're able to tease that out of me. It's really amazing.
Mary, that's sweet. You know, Steve... I'm sorry to interrupt. Steve, we have a Stephen with Stephen just now. But Steve, are you there? He wanted to know if you wouldn't mind. Steve? He's English.
Yes.
Steve, this is Mary. Steve, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
There's all of us go creeping up. He wanted to know if you wouldn't mind doing his real quick.
So what's the next number we've got? What's the birthday?
My birthday is January the 13th, 1975.
1975. Same year, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
January 13th, 1975.
Yes, January.
Okay, we add the 5 and the 3. We have 8. It plus 1 is 9. 7 and 1 is 8. Bring down the 9 and the 1. So we have a 4-digit sum of 1989, and we're going to have to add those together. So we've got 10, 18, 27. Is that right?
Yes.
They add up to 27,
yep.
And that's a 9.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 is the Hermit. So that's the next card. Interesting that we're going in numerical order. This was not planned. The constellation of the Hermit, which consists, and none of us have had none of you three have had the higher personality card as part of it. You've all had the hidden factor or shadow, which is partly a generational thing. To have that. I'm also a hermit, but I'm a moon hermit, so the hermit aspect is not a shadow one. Actually, with the latter cards in the latter prime cards, the shadow is often contained within it. But the hermit is completing karma through service, looking within. It's the seeker. The old wise one is the archetype and represents the journey to the underworld. So the hermit, completing your karma through service. The hermit is a number 9, and numerologically 9 is the last of the primary numbers. And so it's a number of completion. And many people have said that, people who are 9s or hermits are old souls. So there's a sense that you've been incarnated, if you believe in that and work with that many times, and are somehow completing some task in this particular lifetime. That tends to lead to a lot of introspection, solitude, turning within, following your own path, but not doing it in a flamboyant style like a magician might do if somebody was a 1. The hermit doesn't mind looking more conservative because that gives the hermit, much more freedom to really go your own way and be your own iconoclast without throwing it in everybody's face. So a hermit can seem similar conservative on the outside, but underneath is probably the most independent of all the cards, because you've gotten to a point where your own personal integrity of ideas is more important than anything else. You just don't have to flaunt it like those who are still discovering and developing it. You can do it quietly. So hermits tend to go their own path, their own way through life. And they can be incredible teachers for others, but rather than the shoulds and oughts that you find have a tendency towards in Hierophant energy, with the hermit, it's kind of like all I can do is show you what I've discovered to work for myself. If it works for you, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine. So it's like this is the path I've walked that I've found worthwhile. If it works for you, then, feel free. Let's see, what else can I say? Being a hermit myself, it's almost like I get overwhelmed by how much I've learned over the years about this card. Hermits can be very social, but they always need that time and space to retreat into their own solitude to recharge. So magicians can recharge with other people, and magicians are usually Sun, Wheel of Fortune magician. They get their power from other people. Hermits can be social, but they need to have that time to reintegrate themselves, to come back to their center. They need to have a sense of purpose and often decide on a direction fairly early in life. Let's see, the moon as your hidden factor or shadow card. The moon can be a real attraction to all of the things metaphysical and occult. Sometimes when you're very young, they can feel overwhelming and even be terrifying at times, but as you get older, you feel much more comfortable walking those paths that are shown in the moon card. There's a path coming up out of the water of the unconscious with a crustacean, some kind of lobster or crab that's coming up out of that. And then the first thing that's confronted is a dog and wolf, your instinctual feelings that seem to be barring the path. But what happens with the hermit is going to walk that solitary and sometimes terrifying path. And it becomes easier the older you are. You start learning to trust that. It's like learning to be able to run at night when there is no moon by intuitive feel rather than by having to have a flashlight or a particular light. That's the way you have to learn to move through life. So there's lots more to say, but that's a start.
We're working you hard.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That was lovely.
Yes.
Everybody, you must get this book. I mean, I don't go on and on about a certain book. I mean, all your books are fantastic, and we on the guest page of yours we do them listed. But for one, I really want to get more involved in having this book. I don't know about my co-host. I think are kind of on board with me there, because this is fascinating. You're one. I mean, you're remarkable that you come to this, and it's not like everybody else. There's some people that do. You can add this, and this will be this card and this card, and I'm surprised you've never had this. Like Jean Dixon back in the day. It was an everyday in the newspaper first. Read your sign.
Uh-huh.
And I remember wanting to be one of those people that would be read your tarot for your tarot card for the day, right? That would relate to.
Other people have done that, and I find that I like getting so much more deep than you can with the kind of cookie cutter in the paper stuff. So I really like working with people individually and seeing how these things begin to play out differently for each person. Also, with this numerology, you can do kind of a number for the day, but it's much more insightful working with your year card, which is a card that's for you in a particular year, and seeing those lessons evolve over the entire year.
Well, from when I did go through parts of your book, and from what I could read, it was very user friendly. I guess it was very understandable about how to get. For instance, your year card, you would just use your month and date of birth with the year that we're in. And
there's a few exceptions, so it does help to have the book because the numbers, there being only 22 cards that we're dealing with, and having to reduce them, you end up with a couple of unusual situations. Like there's one set that has 3 cards, and that's the 1910 one, the Sun, Wheel of Fortune, Magician. And so people need just a little help to understand, yes, it's true, you have 3 cards. Also, in the this new edition of the book, Who Are You in the Tarot, which was based on my earlier tarot constellations, I added a chapter on relationship dynamics and look at kind of dynamic groups that each person belongs in and how those dynamics work together. In other words, I didn't compare relationships with every single combination. There's just too many variables, but I did look at 6 types of relationships that people get into based on their birth cards, and I have some examples of those, and those are just really fascinating for me.
That's it. I'm going to get this book. I believe I'm just going to have to order it when I can finish this show tonight. Mary, we only have a couple more minutes left, and if there's anything else that you would like to tell any of our listeners about what's going on with you, we have your website. And it's a blog, and I know that you're focusing on more different things these years. But is there anything particular that you'd want to? I know that you do a lot all around the world. I know that, but is there anything you'd like to say before I complete
a lot of the work that I've done is now getting online on webinars, which can be viewed at any time, either online or you can get DVDs from them. So there's a group called globalspiritualstudies.com, as if it was one word, just type in globalspiritualstudies.com. And that's a place that has webinars, and you'll find my name highlighted there, and several courses and sometimes hour workshops, sessions on specific tarot topics. And also the Lenormand cards. The Lenormand cards, which are an old system of cartomancy that I'm very interested in.
I was thinking I want to do so many shows with you, so many interviews with you. I wanted to go into Lamar, yeah. And I have to put that aside. Well, you know, Mary, also, and everybody, and it's on your guest page, you can also go to marygreer.wordpress.com, and so much information on there. And great, I'm glad to hear about the webinars. I saw a few on the WordPress, but come on, and that's fantastic. Anybody listening out there, Mary is truly living her authentic self, and the tarot is defined by what I mean, and you continually amaze me with how you're it. I'm sorry, I don't praise everybody, Mary. Honestly, it's your delight, and I so much appreciate your work and what it's making a big difference for many people, and me included. So, and I really thank you for joining us this evening so much.
It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this, talking about one of my favorite subjects in the whole world.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary. We'll have a great evening, okay?
And same to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers, get access, psychic access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.